All right, we're live.
Yeah, in Orlando
Yeah.
at
okay.
Excell.
So this is a little bit different than we normally do it. One, we're on a stage. We actually have people watching us, which I don't think we've ever done this before.
Nope.
And we're at a conference. So last time we did something with, we didn't have a live audience, but we had people around, was at our partner summit in May.
Yeah. I think it's just super excited, but I think, welcome to Know Your Worth for those who are listening, for those who don't know what Know Your Worth is. I think really it's just a chance for us to share what M&A is all about and how we think about things. And for those who are exploring what M&A might mean to them, what's that process look like? And so Michael and I have kind of designed this to bring different people on stage to just talk about their experience.
And we actually got the request, make it as reductive as possible. This is for the generalist, somebody that's maybe never done a transaction or just wants to know more about how this works. So we are trying to take this from sort of the life cycle of transaction from start to finish. How does it work? How do you find somebody? What are some of the unique challenges? How do you fund a transaction? How do you close on one? So I'm excited to talk with Nate Fisher. He is our colleague, our friend, and somebody that has actually transacted with Carson. So we are going to show a quick disclosure video for you and then hear from you. Where's it? I can't see the timer.
All right, Nate, tell us who you are, where you're from.
Well, first, thanks for having me, Jeff. And
I used a mic, buddy. Everybody's going to hear you.
New to this too. But again, my name is Nate Fisher, Managing Director, Wealth Advisor in Hanover, New Hampshire. Joined Carson about 8 months ago, and happy to share details about the trend, everything that we went through.
So we're excited about this. One of the questions we've gotten quite a bit is around a second generation advisor, either taking over or coming into a family business. What are some of the unique challenges about it? What made you and your dad, Tim, decide to actually hire representation and go to market versus trying to do something internal? And then how did you sort of narrow the field to Carson? So if you wouldn't mind, just start from the beginning. How'd you get into the business? How'd you decide to work with dad? And then what made dad actually decide to go external and hire FP Transitions?
Sure. So I think like a lot of firms in the country, there's a lot of family-run firms. And so my dad brought me into the firm about 9 years ago, and I started working with him. And, we had a great run. We created another partnership off of our initial firm. And then over the next 8 years, we built up, a solid firm. But we came to a place where, we needed to transition into, some goals that we had.
Right. Yeah. And you and I are almost the same age. And I think your dad is actually the same age as my dad. So
right.
I think Tim made a joke about it. He probably should have started the process maybe 7-8 years prior. But at what point did he sort of make the realization, all right, this isn't something we can do external. Like, we're going to need help from the market. And I need somebody to maybe introduce me to the market.
Sure. And
start educating me on what's out there.
Right. You don't know what you don't know.
Right.
And so part of the succession plan, and we kept talking to our clients about this, was, dad is going to retire one day. And he kept saying, it'll be 3 years or so from now. And then 3 years passed, another 3 years passed. And we came to a place where we really almost needed some help in trying to figure out those next steps.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where we use actually FP Transitions, which was a third party to help us sort of shop out and meet what else was out there in the country, in the world of RA spaces, family-owned offices, and see what we were missing out on or what opportunities we could look for.
Yeah, I think just in any conversation that Michael and I have with potential sellers, I think it's just really important to just understand what your goals and objectives are. Everybody has a different goal and objective of what a succession plan may look like. And so I think when we first talk or work with firms like FP, trying to figure out what are your goals and objectives so that Carson can meet you where you're at. And, I think it's really important because your dad had a different goal and objective, and you have a different goal and objective. You guys
Sure.
Two different age generations there. So trying to walk that fine line of, meeting your dad where you're at, but also meeting where you're at. So can you explain a little bit about that process of when you're going with FP? How did you guys know what that actually looked like?
Well, we had some goals in mind, as sort of the space evolves anyways. And so what we were seeing, a general trend was that what different RA firms were offering. And then could they offer, tax prep? Could they offer estate planning? Could they offer, advanced solutions financial planning and some really robust back office support and extend the experience? And so that has changed over the last 8 years or so. And we've been trying to build up to that. So yes, different goals in mind in terms of where my dad saw the business going, where I saw it going. But for the most part, fortunately, we were on board together through the whole process, and we were willing to evolve together.
It was, I thought it was refreshing too. In every conversation we had, Tim was obviously very focused on more of the short term. I need to make sure that I've got a succession plan for myself, but
Right.
he at the outset said, we're going to go with a firm that provides the best possible platform for Nate and Diane.
That's
So
right.
someplace where he knew he felt you could succeed and would have the backing of a larger institutional firm to provide those solutions and services you offer.
Yeah, we're a small firm, so we're really close, a tight-knit family. So it wasn't like he was just trying to do everything for him and have that succession plan and sell the business and make a profit. He was really concerned about what was next for me, that next generation, that G2,
right?
His staff members, who he cares a lot about.
Yeah.
So that was a big part of the decision making and the vesting of all the different people we spoke with.
Hanover, New Hampshire is not Miami or Boston.
No.
And your name was on the door. So talk a little bit more about just the name recognition in a family-owned practice in a relatively small town.
Yeah, that was a delicate matter, and I
Right.
think we've navigated pretty well. Not everybody loves us in our small town, of course, but
most people do.
But we've been there for a long time.
Yeah.
And so people know the name, and they know Nate, they know Tim, and they know the surrounding family. So that was a part of our success. People knew us, they trusted us, they knew that we grew up there, and a lot of our clients we've known for, since I was a child.
Yeah.
So that was a big piece, of course.
Right.
Yeah. So I think that this just bridges into an important conversation is, when your name's on the door and you decide to partner with a firm like Carson, now you take on the Carson Wealth brand name, clients start to wonder, what's going to happen to my advisors? Can you kind of shed light on how those client conversations went and how you guys messaged it to your clients that you guys aren't leaving?
Sure.
Yeah. And were there any pitfalls? I mean,
Yeah.
was there anything that you didn't anticipate with that conversation?
Yeah. I mean, it was, I wouldn't say it was stressful, but we didn't know what the clients were going to think at first. And right now we're co-branded. So that was something at Carson we were able to work out. So Fisher Financial Advisors, Carson Wealth. And so that was sort of a soft rollout of what we're doing. But the feedback was really positive. A lot of the clients were wondering what was going to happen next, what was going to happen when dad retires, where was I going to position myself, and who else were you going to hire? Client service managers, other advisors, and was there a risk to the clients themselves? And so fortunately, all that we had to explain and share with them about this opportunity, the results are positive, and clients have been really happy so far.
Yeah. And I remember you and I, when we were talking earlier, you kind of told us that you guys developed some sort of script to basically message with the clients, and you started to feel like going into it, you thought the client conversations were going to be hard, but throughout the process, you started realizing like, hey, my clients trust me, and it turned out to be, I don't want to say easy, but tell us a little bit about that.
Sure.
Why do you think that was?
Yeah.
Why do you think they were simpler than you anticipated?
Well, the conversations started off hard, and they got easier as they went,
Right.
like anything else does. But there's a training team with Carson, like there is with so many different training teams. And we had support to talk about how that conversation should go, what we can explain, and what the client can expect. And I think that was really, really important for us to get that feedback, and so that we knew what to do there.
Yeah.
But,
And you're not the first office that's actually said the conversation around creating a client conversation. How do I script it? How do I present it? How do I answer any objections? How do I show the added benefits to like true wealth planning for that client?
Sure.
That's actually their favorite part of the integration process, which I don't think you and I even anticipated when we first started doing this together.
For
But
me,
that's a popular session.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's, I think, hugely impactful.
and for me, it was exciting. It was like I got to share all these really great resources
Right.
and opportunities for the clients that, not that they were missing, but that they didn't know they could have.
Yeah.
We're working to achieve at some point, anyways.
Right.
And they were thrilled. So it really went over great.
Good.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask transition to
Sure.
maybe a little bit of a sensitive topic, but it can be touchy when an external institutional buyer like a Carson
Yes.
comes in and buys into a family practice.
Mhm.
Now you're unique. You are a Carson owner and stakeholder,
Correct.
but would you talk a little bit about just what drove you to look for the external partner, some of the economic factors, because that matters to a lot of people. And I think a lot of second generation advisors are now coming into the realization
Right.
that the debt load and the economics around buying in maybe are a little bit outside of their realm of possibility.
Yeah, they should. I mean, G2 is in a unique position right now. and it's pretty common for a practice like ours to go through this change. The difficulty is my generation. We've heard a lot about this today, and a lot of talks that have happened. The debt to take on is interesting. With the housing market, with student loans, and with the increased cost across the board, all of a sudden we had a great time growing our firm and doubling our firm in about 8 years' time, which was exciting. But all of a sudden we had to have that hard conversation that was, how is Nate going to pay for this? How is Dad going to sell this business? And am I ready to take on that liability, that big of a debt?
Yeah.
And because there's a lot of unknowns there. And so that did play a huge factor in our decision, of course.
Right.
And that's why it worked out so well.
Yeah. When I think it's just
that answers your question.
It does. Yeah, it absolutely does.
Yeah. Well, I think it's just been interesting over the last, 5 to 7 years where you guys were growing your practice, not necessarily knowing how it was actually going to increase enterprise value, which is phenomenal, but how much harder is actually going to make it for you to buy your dad out at the end of the day. And then top that on to rising interest rates when you go for financing. That just puts another burden on it. And what it sounds like, it seemed like the most logical sense was for you to seek external buyers. And I think the unique thing when you seek external buyers is you're not losing ownership in your company because you're becoming an owner in a larger enterprise.
That's a great point, Jeff.
And that was exciting to us to fully understand.
Yeah.
Becoming a stakeholder in Carson, shifting our equity from the firm that we built and we're so proud of.
Right.
And having that, be an economic bonus for us.
Yeah. And that I'd say one of the more impactful conversations you and I have is showing equity appreciation in a larger enterprise like a Carson versus what it normally would do for an individual RIA or hybrid shop on their own.
Yep.
And I think that's where you start talking about real wealth creation for really talented second generation advisors like Nate. Mm-hmm. So it was a perfect situation for us because we found a terrific G1 who had extensive ties to the community, a well-known name in the community, bringing on a son that is extremely talented, but now has a piece of a much larger pie. So we're thrilled to have you. I want to mention last night when we were having dinner, you told a really great story. And I think this is really important for second generation advisors about the emotional component. The first time the client called in and was asking for you, would you mind sharing that story again? And then how you had to sort of manage the emotions of dad?
Well, the client,
wouldn't mind, just make sure you hold the mic a little bit closer.
So no, the client transition is tricky. And I think our situation is unique. There's the firms do, so many different things. But it's hard to meet with I have my own clients that I'm working with on a daily basis. Dad's had clients that he's had for 30 years.
Right.
Fortunately, for 8 years as a mentor, he was amazing at letting some of those aspects go, allowing me to sit with the clients on a regular basis and really getting to know them. So the relationship grew over time. But yes, there's a moment where, as back to your story, no, that's okay. I want to meet with you. I don't need to meet with Tim today.
Yeah.
So as honored as I am for those things that happen, it sometimes saddens you that, the clients are ready to actually move on to that next advisor.
Right. And Tim noticed, you mentioned he was
more proud than he was.
I was going to say, it had to have been a proud dad moment.
Yeah. And he's always sort of been that way.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's special. He's an educator as much as he is a financial advisor. And that comes through the way he communicates.
I wouldn't be here without him. And certainly he's helped to empower me and give me that confidence to do so.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
But it's something I think for a second generation to sort of keep an eye on or think through. There's going to be that moment when the handoff happens.
Yes.
And when all of a sudden you are not G2, you are now G1.
Right.
Well, and I'm sure it provides your dad a level of confidence knowing that, hey, when he does decide to ride off in the sunset, that everybody's going to be taken care of because they're comfortable with you as their advisor.
Yeah, I hope so. And I feel that they are. So that's been great. Right. Now I got to raise my kids to step up.
You got a long way to go.
Got a few years.
Any advice for a family office or a second generation that you'd want to pass on navigating the process, having conversations, managing dad, mom, however that might be?
I mean, you could really narrow it down to specifics.
Yeah.
So I think, on a 20,000 foot view, it is a big transition. It is a big process, and you've got to get your feet wet. You got to really get involved in the whole process. And you can talk specifically about the software. You can talk about that client transition. There's a whole variety, the repapering and so forth. being transparent, letting your team know, letting your clients know at the right moment, I think is important. But letting your staff, don't keep it a secret from them what's going to happen.
Right.
And really get them involved, because they're going to have specific jobs that they need to take care of, and to delegate that out to do the transition and then work through, those problems takes a full team effort.
Yeah.
So your firm should be in the right place to do that and be open mindset sort of folks, and really willing to dive right in.
I think it's great advice. And the fact that Diane was involved so early in the process
Sure.
is what leads to a really successful transition, but not just the transition itself, but gathering the appropriate due diligence information and the financials. And I know you were relying on her for a lot of the detailed reports that she was pulling together.
Yeah, Diane Doherty was pivotal in what we were trying to do, and she worked tirelessly to get us through a lot of those nuts and bolts. And she's a huge asset to our firm. So that was a big piece for sure.
There's a lot of firms that don't share with the staff early
Yes.
in the process. And
Right.
at some point we have to ask, who's under sort of the cone of silence right now? Are there people we need to get involved earlier rather than later? The last thing we want to have happen is somebody signs an actual term sheet or a letter of intent.
Yeah.
Jeff and I show up with a few members of Carson Wealth and our integration team.
Who are these guys?
And yeah, exactly. Who are these guys?
Yeah.
What are they going to do? So
Yeah.
I think it's important. The
Well-
more you can bring the staff under the tent earlier is really important.
Yeah, well, I think it's super beneficial to include them early, because sometimes they want a voice in that process too. I mean, what if they
Without
don't?
doubt.
What if they don't agree with who they're going to partner with? in the
Even if
future?
they're not an equity owner, it's
Yeah.
important for them to have a voice in the
Yeah,
process.
nobody likes those major surprises.
Right.
And they want to make sure that their career is going to last.
Yeah.
They're part of this team,
Yeah.
as part of this transition. So that's huge.
Yeah,
And
that's
through the
that's-
transition,
That's well said.
I mean, I never knew our firm better as we went through this process.
Right.
I mean, all the data and all the things that you have to organize for this to happen, you really understand how the business runs.
Mhm.
And in turn, that was really helpful, actually.
That's great.
Yeah, I mean, and even from an ops side too, like taking a look under the hood for who you're going to be partnering with, making sure that they're able to provide that level of service that they're
Sure.
going to want going forward.
Right.
I mean, how are they going to be able to message to the clients that the services are actually better when your operations team doesn't even know who they're partnering with?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had to do some background checks on you guys.
Did we pass?
Well, we passed.
You
We're good.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to share? Any other high level items that you think were unique with taking over a family practice? And I mean, it's a little bit different that you've been in the business for a while. You're not green by any means. I mean, you've been hunting and gathering, you've been meeting with clients, you've been servicing clients. But anything else that you want to share just about the process or how it worked? Anything you wish you would have known before you went in?
I think you need to take all the training opportunities really seriously. So
Yeah.
Carson does a really good job with the transition team, having boots on the ground. Stephanie, Joanna coming out, visiting the office, walking things through, letting people know what to expect. But there's so much that Carson has in the training that you just need to reach out to. If you don't reach out, you're only going to get what you're getting. And so you really have to dig in and understand all those new processes. And the Salesforce, CRM switch was a big one. And so that's been a really big beast for us to work through. It's amazing. It's going great, but it's a lot to learn. It
It's
took
not
a lot of
easy.
hours to get through. So I would just, ask more questions and really dig in, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. So I think the other question that I have is, I always like these conversations with somebody who's gone through the process. There's so many people who you've been in their shoes before. People out there are contemplating selling, or it's the thought in their mind of, hey, what do I do next as far as selling?
Well, just look across our advisor network.
Yeah.
I mean, you see sons and daughters throughout the entire general session.
Sure.
I mean, it's all over the place.
So I guess where that leads is knowing that you've been through it. You're still young and you got a long headway. What advice would you give to somebody who's contemplating maybe they're a father-son or a daughter-father practice out there, and what advice would you give them?
I would say move quickly. I would say go right into those conversations, speak to folks like both of you about what to expect and what this means, how this works,
Right.
how this transition happens, because sort of like my dad retiring soon, it happened really quickly. And all of a sudden, it's not too late, but if you had 5 years where that G1 is going to retire at a later date and they really get to work that transition over a longer period of time, it's going to be a better succession plan for the clients, for your staff and everybody else. So I would say get involved early and find out more about it.
Yeah, we were at a conference last year. One of our partners did on M&A, and they had a great guest speaker talking about enterprise value and when is the value highest in anticipation of a retirement. And it was 7 years before the G1 exits completely.
Okay.
So when you using your advice, that's super accurate. You work backwards, and the reason for that is a few things, right? There's still growth to be had if the G1's going to be around for 5 years. That's not to say you transact 7 years ahead of time.
Sure.
It's you start the process.
Right.
I think what's unique with you and Tim is you did start the client communication piece well in advance.
Right.
Maybe the valuation stuff and the transaction stuff came about later, but at least you started that piece. So I think that you at least acknowledge that you took the right approach once you got to that stage.
Sure, but less disruptive for the clients, of course.
Without a doubt. Yeah. They'd already heard the story or
Yes.
been exposed to you. They knew exactly who you were. It wasn't a fresh face coming in at transaction close.
Yeah.
Sure.
And I think another piece to that too is like a lot of times when we're speaking with advisors, they're like, well, my practice is going to continue to grow, so maybe I'll sell it down the road. But one piece that they're often missing is, well, if you sell now or sell a portion of it now, your equity is still going to grow inside that bigger organization. So that's the missing piece that they often don't necessarily think about. But that's where deal structure is important in this, and understanding the mechanics behind that is a portion of your consideration being taken in the buyer equity could help bridge that gap when you do think that your firm is going to continue to grow.
And I think it's a faulty assumption too, because we have a growth problem in our industry right now, especially with individual practices. We have Laura Delaney in the audience today. Fidelity does some great data around this. When you look at average net new asset growth rates, anywhere from 2 to 3% for a smaller firm, it's really tough to make the bet that equity value is going to appreciate faster than a firm like a Carson or an active aggregator integrator.
Sure.
So you are leaving chips on the table if you don't transact, if your growth rate's not going to exceed the firm that you're partnering with.
And that was exciting for us, of course.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and then the flip side too is when you're partnering with an organization like Carson or somebody else out there, if you're growing at 2% right now, with us being able to help you with capacity issues, where's that going to take your firm to grow in the future? So now not only is your firm continuing to grow, but you're also helping provide additional benefit enterprise value towards the bigger organization due to your growth.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. It's a great point.
Yeah. Yeah. And it feels like that. It feels like a more consistent growth pattern for us.
Yeah.
With opportunities to continue to grow.
Yeah. So I'll also say, just in you and how you carry yourself, you seem energized. You're excited.
I'm excited.
This is your This is your first Excell as an actual colleague.
That's right.
But obviously we've seen each other at many of these conferences before, but I am really excited. Jeff and I are going to be out there in 2 weeks, right? For the launch event. We're going to officially announce the partnership to your clients, even though we actually transacted in January. This is a celebration event. Most of your clients are going to be there. Our leadership from Carson Wealth is going to be there. So we're really excited to attend and help celebrate that partnership.
Yeah. I'm glad you guys are going to make it. It's a beautiful time of year.
Yeah.
We'll be in full fall foliage.
Will be changing.
Yes, that's right.
It will be cooler than Omaha, no matter what. So I'm excited for it.
Yeah. I'm excited to have you both there.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. Any parting shots or anything last minute you want to say?
No, I would just like to say, even though it's been only 8 months, I'm really happy with the transition. The clients are happy. The opportunities we've already, started to roll out, and so things are going very well. So I'm really been.
Well, I'll echo that. There are deals you do because of the economics where it just makes sense. This is going to be accretive to us. It's going to make sense for the owner. That's one reason. There's deals you almost have to do because of economics. Then there's the deals you do because you want to work with those people and you like being around them. And I think we felt that from day one. This was just a terrific cultural fit. We loved having you guys in Omaha. We loved spending the time in Hanover. We've been back 3-4 times, I think. So.
Yeah, I just want to echo what Michael said. I think, oftentimes people say when you're going to be partnering with another organization, you often lead with culture. And we just couldn't be more happy with what we found within you, Diane, and Tim. I think you guys are just additive to the culture that Carson has built, and just super happy to be your partner.
Yeah, happy to be part of it too. I appreciate that, of course. But really happy with it.
All right, so we got to throw a quick plug in before we let everybody go. Facts vs. Feelings recorded their live 100th episode today. We got to see it in person. They're recording 2 more. If you're not subscribing and listening to Facts vs. Feelings, you are missing out on one of the best investments-related podcasts in the industry.
Agreed.
In my opinion.
I got my T-shirt.
Yeah, I know. I need to get mine. I was told I was going to get one to wear on stage, but I guess not. All right. Thanks, Nate. I appreciate your time today. I appreciate you being here.
Glad to be here. Thanks again.
All right. Thanks, guys.